Rosa Martinez was not supposed to be in the nursery. She was not supposed to touch the millionaire's baby, question the private doctors, or speak above a whisper in the Bennett mansion. Her job was to wash bottles, polish floors, and pretend she did not hear Daniel Bennett begging his 6-month-old son to eat. But grief has a sound, and Rosa knew it too well. 1 year earlier, she had begged in another hospital room while her own baby slipped away, and men in suits offered her money to stay quiet. Now Noah Bennett was fading in front of the same kind of silence. When the baby refused another feeding, Rosa stepped forward. The nanny tried to block her. Daniel shouted that she was only a maid. Rosa answered with the calm of a woman who had already lost everything. "Then fire me after he drinks." She took Noah into her arms. The room held its breath. And when the baby finally swallowed, the secret buried inside the Bennett hospital system began rising with him. Before that night, the Bennett mansion had been a house where everything expensive sounded empty. The floors were white Italian marble, polished twice a day until Rosa could see ceiling lights trembling beneath her mop. The nursery alone had cost more than the small apartment she rented across town. Its curtains were imported linen. Its crib had been carved by hand in Vermont. A machine beside the rocking chair measured room temperature, humidity, and music through hidden speakers. Still, Noah Bennett cried as if he had been left in the dark. He was 6 months old, small for his age, with pale cheeks, delicate wrists, and eyes too tired for a baby. In framed photographs along the hallway, his mother, Caroline, smiled while holding her round stomach in the garden. In those pictures, Daniel Bennett stood beside her, proud, handsome, and untouched by fear. After Caroline died, the photographs stayed. The woman in them seemed to brighten every corridor, while the living man beneath them grew colder each week. Daniel owned Bennett Medical Group, a chain of private hospitals praised for luxury maternity suites. He understood numbers, acquisitions, boards, expansion plans, and the language of authority. But when Noah turned his face from another bottle, Daniel became a father with shaking hands. He could buy specialists, but he could not buy hunger. He could hire nurses, but he could not hire trust. Sometimes Rosa saw him through the nursery doorway, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, whispering to the baby as if negotiation might work on grief. "Please, Noah," he would say, "just a little, for me." The head nanny, Margaret Vale, ruled the nursery like a courtroom. She wore pearl earrings, spotless navy dresses, and a smile that never softened. She had worked for wealthy families for 20 years and believed poor women confused affection with competence. To Margaret, Rosa was part of the furniture, useful, silent, replaceable. Rosa washed the bottles after they came back full. She wiped formula from polished wood. She folded blankets that still smelled faintly of the mother who would never return to wrap them around her son. Rosa never asked to hold Noah. She barely allowed herself to look at him for more than a few seconds. Looking too long opened a door she had nailed shut inside herself. 1 year earlier, there had been another baby, another hospital room, another tiny chest rising too fast under blue light. Mateo had been born early, smaller than hope, but alive. Rosa remembered the warmth of his feet in her palm. She remembered singing to him through wires and plastic. She remembered begging a nurse not to leave him alone while alarms cried behind a curtain. Afterward, men in dark suits had used gentle voices. They had told her complications happened. They had placed papers on a table and spoken of assistance, privacy, closure. Rosa had signed because grief made every word swim. She left that hospital with a check she never cashed and a pair of blue socks she carried in her apron pocket every day. No one in the Bennett mansion knew about the socks. No one knew that sometimes, while scrubbing the kitchen sink, Rosa pressed her hand against her pocket to make sure they were still there. No one knew why she avoided the nursery during lullaby hour, or why the smell of warmed milk could make her grip the counter until her knuckles whitened. That evening, the house prepared for another night of failure. A pediatric nutritionist arrived with a leather bag and charts. A night nurse warmed 3 formulas. Margaret dimmed the lights exactly 16% because she had read that overstimulation worsened feeding refusal. Daniel stood near the window, staring at the dark lawn, pretending not to hear the fear in everyone's careful voices. Downstairs, Rosa rinsed a silver spoon no baby had used. Through the ceiling came Noah's cry, thin and broken, then sharper, then suddenly weak. Rosa stopped moving. Water overflowed the spoon and ran across her wrist. She knew that change. It was not the cry of a spoiled child. It was not the protest Margaret always described. It was the sound of a baby losing the strength to ask for what he needed. Rosa closed her eyes, and for one terrible second the marble kitchen vanished. She was back under hospital lights, hearing Matteo make that same small, fading sound while people with badges moved too slowly. A glass slipped from her hand and shattered in the sink. The cook cursed from the pantry, but Rosa was already turning toward the stairs. Every rule in the Bennett mansion rose before her like locked gates. Maids did not run. Maids did not enter the nursery without being called. Maids did not tell millionaires that all their money had missed the simplest thing. Noah cried again, weaker this time. Rosa touched the blue socks in her pocket, took one breath, and climbed. At the top of the stairs, Rosa heard Margaret Vale's voice cut through the nursery like a polished knife. "Not that angle. Keep his head higher," Dr. Henley said higher. "I am trying," the night nurse answered, and there was a tremor in her professional calm. Then Daniel spoke, lower and rougher. "He is not swallowing. Why is he not swallowing?" Rosa stopped outside the nursery door. She could see only pieces of the room through the narrow opening. The gold edge of the crib, the white sleeve of the nurse, Daniel's hand gripping the back of the rocking chair. Noah's cry had thinned into a sound that barely seemed to belong to a living child. It scratched at the air, small and exhausted, and every breath after it came too late. "Give him to me," Rosa said. Nobody heard her at first. In that house, the voices of servants were trained to disappear before they reached important ears. She stepped into the doorway. "Give him to me." Margaret turned first. Her eyes widened, not with concern, but with insult. "Rosa, leave this room immediately." Daniel looked at her as if she had walked in holding fire. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair was uncombed, and the wealth that usually surrounded him like armor had fallen away. He was simply a father, standing beside a baby who was losing strength in front of him. "This is not your place," he said. Rosa looked past him to Noah. The baby had turned his face from the bottle. His tiny hands opened and closed without purpose, searching for something that was not there. His lips were dry. His eyes were half shut, not in sleep, but in surrender. "He is tired," Rosa said. Margaret snapped. "We know he is tired. We have 3 medical professionals involved." "No," Rosa said. Her voice stayed quiet, but something in it made the nurse glance up. "He is tired of being handled. He is scared of the lights. He is scared of the bottle because every time it comes, everyone becomes afraid. He feels it." Daniel stared at her. "You think you understand my son because you wash his bottles?" The words struck her, but they did not move her backward. There had been a time when such words would have made her lower her eyes. There had been a time when she would have apologized for breathing too loudly in a room like this. But Noah made that fading sound again, and Matteo's last breath answered from somewhere inside her. Rosa stepped closer. Margaret blocked her with one arm. "Do not touch him." Rosa's hand went once to her apron pocket. The blue socks were there, small, soft, real. Then she lifted her chin and looked at Daniel Bennett, the man whose name stood in gold letters on the hospital where her life had broken. "Then fire me after he drinks." For a second no one moved. It was not a challenge, shouted in anger. It was not a plea. It was the calm sentence of a woman who had already survived the worst answer life could give her. Daniel's mouth tightened. Margaret made a sharp noise of disbelief, but Noah's breath hitched again. Daniel stepped aside. Rosa took the baby from the nurse, and the first thing she did was turn away from the light. She did not bounce him. She did not force the nipple toward his mouth. She tucked his cheek against the warm hollow beneath her collarbone and covered the side of his face with her palm, shielding him from the room full of watching adults. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to bury. One hand supported the back of his neck. The other rested against his ribs, feeling their quick, uneven rise. "Despacio," she whispered. "Slowly, little one, slowly." Margaret opened her mouth, but Daniel lifted one hand without looking at her. For once, the room obeyed silence. Rosa breathed in, slow enough for Noah to borrow the rhythm. She swayed once, then again, almost too gently to see. The lullaby came before she decided to sing it. It was a song her mother had sung in a kitchen with cracked tiles and rain tapping the roof. Rosa had sung it to Matteo through hospital plastic, believing love could pass through anything if it was patient enough. Noah's cry stopped. The absence of it was so sudden that the nurse sucked in a breath. Daniel's eyes moved from Rosa's face to his son's mouth. Noah did not drink yet. He only rested there, stunned by quiet. His fingers curled against Rosa's uniform. One tiny fist caught the fabric and held on. Rosa did not hurry. She knew the cruelty of being rushed back into fear. She let him rest. She hummed. She let him hear one heartbeat that did not panic. When his breathing softened, she turned the bottle slightly, warmed it in her hand, touched the nipple to his lower lip, and waited. Noah turned away at first. Margaret whispered, "See?" Rosa kept humming. The baby turned back. His mouth opened. He swallowed once. Daniel made a sound that was almost pain. Noah swallowed again, then again. The bottle trembled in Rosa's hand because she was trying not to cry. Everyone in the nursery watched the clear measurement line on the bottle lower by a fraction, then another fraction, as if they were watching a miracle being written in milk. Margaret's face had gone pale with anger. The night nurse covered her mouth. Daniel stood utterly still, his eyes wet but unblinking, as if any movement might break the spell. Rosa did not look at any of them. She looked only at Noah. "That is it," she whispered. "You were hungry. You were just afraid." The bottle was not empty when Noah stopped. It did not need to be. He had taken more than he had taken in 2 days. He sagged against Rosa, heavy with the first true calm the room had felt in weeks. Daniel reached toward him, then stopped. "May I?" The question surprised everyone, including Daniel. He was a man used to command, but in that moment he asked permission from the maid he had called only a maid minutes before. Rosa looked at him carefully. "Sit down first, not by the window. The chair there, where the light is softer." Margaret made a choking sound. "Mr. Bennett, you do not have to be instructed by staff." Daniel did not answer her. He sat where Rosa told him. Rosa placed Noah into his arms slowly, guiding Daniel's elbow, adjusting the baby's head, lowering Daniel's shoulder when it rose with fear. "Do not hold him like he is glass," she said. "Hold him like he belongs here." Daniel looked down at his son. Noah stirred but did not cry. For the first time since Caroline's funeral, Daniel Bennett smiled and looked terrified of hope. By morning, the story had already changed, depending on who told it. In the laundry room, one of the younger maids whispered that Rosa had saved the baby with a song. In the garage, the driver said Mr. Bennett had nearly cried. In the kitchen, the cook crossed herself twice and set a plate of eggs beside Rosa without a word. But upstairs, in the nursery, Margaret Vale began building a different story. It was emotional interference, she told Daniel after breakfast, standing near his office window with a folder pressed to her chest. "A distressed child may respond temporarily to novelty. That does not mean the response is healthy. In fact, it can become dangerous if dependency forms around an inappropriate figure." Daniel had not slept. He sat behind his desk in yesterday's shirt, watching video footage from the nursery monitor on his tablet. Again and again, Rosa stepped into the room. Again and again, Noah calmed in her arms. "He ate," Daniel said. "For now. He ate because of her." Margaret's lips tightened. "Because she disregarded every boundary in this house. Mr. Bennett, grief makes people vulnerable. Yours, of course, but hers as well." That made him look up. "What does that mean?" "I mean, I have seen this before. A staff member becomes emotionally attached to a child above her station. She begins with concern, then advice, then special access. Before long, the child cannot function without her, and the family is held hostage by sentiment." Daniel closed the tablet. "You are saying Rosa planned this?" "I am saying we do not know her. Not really." Downstairs, Rosa scrubbed a pot that was already clean. Her hands moved because stopping would let her feel too much. Noah had eaten. That should have been enough. She should have stayed grateful for that single good thing. Instead, the memory of his fingers curled in her uniform kept opening and closing around her heart. She told herself he was not Matteo. She repeated it each time she rinsed a bottle. He was not Matteo. He had a father, a mansion, a name that opened locked doors. He had doctors and lawyers, and a nursery full of machines. Matteo had had a plastic bassinet in an overcrowded ward, and a mother who did not speak the right language loudly enough to make people hurry. Still, when Rosa closed her eyes, the weight in her arms was the same. Around noon, Margaret entered the kitchen without greeting anyone. Conversation stopped. She looked at Rosa as if the woman had left muddy footprints on white carpet. "Mr. Bennett has decided that you will return to your normal duties," Margaret said. "You are not to enter the nursery unless specifically instructed by me or by a licensed medical professional. You are not to touch Noah. You are not to sing to him. You are not to present yourself as necessary. Do you understand? The cook stared down into a bowl of chopped herbs. Rosa dried her hands on a towel. I understand what you said. Margaret's eyes narrowed. That is not the same as obedience. Rosa folded the towel once. No, sometimes it is not. The kitchen went still. Margaret stepped closer. Be very careful. Poor women often mistake pity for permission. Rosa felt heat rise in her chest, but she swallowed it. Anger had never saved her. Not in the hospital, not in the office where she had signed papers, not at Mateo's tiny grave. She had learned that anger could keep a person standing, but it could also make powerful people point and say, "See, she is unstable. I will do my work," Rosa said. "See that you do." For the rest of the day, Noah stayed upstairs without her. Rosa heard pieces of him through the mansion's vents and walls. A short cry near 2 o'clock. A longer one after 4. The heavy footsteps of Daniel pacing above the kitchen. The elevator bell when the pediatrician arrived. The soft but urgent ring of Margaret's phone. By evening, the bottle cart returned to the kitchen with 2 bottles still nearly full. Rosa stared at them. "Do not," the cook whispered. Her name was Elsie, and she had worked in rich houses long enough to know which good impulses got people fired. They will blame you if you go. They will blame you if you stay. But if you go, they can see it. Rosa rinsed 1 bottle, then another. The milk ran down the drain in pale streams. She remembered pouring Mateo's unused formula into a hospital sink the morning after he died because nobody had known what else to do with it. Waste was not always money. Sometimes waste was love that arrived too late. Upstairs, Noah began to cry again. Rosa gripped the edge of the counter. Elsie whispered, "Rosa, I know." She did not go. Not that night. She stood in the kitchen with both hands on the sink and let the cry pass through her like punishment. She told herself that obeying might keep her job, and keeping her job might pay the rent, and paying the rent might keep her from becoming another woman with grief and nowhere to sleep. She told herself that Noah had a father who would figure it out. But near midnight, Daniel came down the back stairs carrying his son. Rosa turned. He looked older than he had that morning. Noah lay against his shoulder with his face turned away from the world. His lips were dry again. Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. "He will not take it from me." Margaret was not with him. Rosa understood what it cost him to come to the kitchen. A man like Daniel Bennett could summon people with a button. He could order specialists to fly in overnight. But he had carried his baby down the servants' stairs because desperation had stripped hierarchy down to the bone. "May I try?" Rosa asked. Daniel looked at her then, really looked, and she saw suspicion fighting shame. "Why does he come with you?" There it was. The question beneath every accusation. Not how did you help him, but what do you want? Rosa could have told him part of the truth. She could have said she had been a mother. She could have said she knew babies. She could have said grief had trained her ear until every cry carried meaning. But the full truth lived too close to the Bennett name, and she was not ready to place Mateo on Daniel's desk like evidence. "Because I am not afraid of his crying," she said. "I am afraid for him. That is different." Daniel lowered his eyes to Noah. Rosa took the baby. This time, Daniel did not step away. He watched from close enough to see the details. How she darkened the corner by turning 1 lamp off. How she warmed the bottle in a bowl instead of letting the machine beep. How she waited for Noah's breath to settle before offering anything. Noah drank less than he had the night before, but he drank. When it was over, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his head bowed. The richest man Rosa had ever met looked defeated by a 6-month-old child in a 4-ounce bottle. "My wife would have known what to do," he said. Rosa kept Noah against her shoulder. Maybe she would have been scared too. His jaw tightened. Caroline was not scared of anything. Everyone is scared when love can be lost. Daniel looked at her sharply, but she did not apologize. Noah burped softly against her uniform. The small sound should not have mattered. It filled the room like forgiveness. The next morning, Victor Hale arrived. Rosa knew lawyers even before she heard his name. They had a way of entering rooms as if every chair and every silence belonged to them. Victor was thin, silver-haired, and perfectly dressed, with a leather briefcase that looked older than Rosa's car. He greeted Daniel in the foyer, kissed Margaret's cheek with professional fondness, and glanced at Rosa only long enough to classify her. "That is her?" he asked. Margaret did not lower her voice. "Yes," Victor smiled. It was not unkind. That made it worse. Cruel smiles could be fought. Polite ones locked the door before you noticed. Later, Rosa was called into Daniel's office. She had never been inside. The room smelled of cedar, coffee, and old money. Books no one touched lined the shelves. A portrait of Daniel's grandfather watched over everything, with the satisfied expression of a man who had never been denied entry anywhere. Daniel stood by the mantel. Victor sat behind the desk as if he owned it. Margaret stood near the door. "Rosa," Daniel said, "Mr. Hale advises the family on legal matters." "I know what a lawyer is," Rosa answered. Victor's smile deepened. "Of course. This is simply a conversation. Mr. Bennett is grateful for your concern for his son. Everyone is. But the circumstances of last night require clarity." Rosa said nothing. "Have you ever cared for infants professionally?" Victor asked. "No." Margaret folded her arms. Victor wrote something on a pad. "Medical training?" "No." "Certification in feeding therapy?" "No." "Then would you agree that your involvement with Noah Bennett exists outside your assigned duties and outside your qualifications?" Rosa looked at Daniel. He did not meet her eyes. "I would agree. I am not certified," she said. "I would not agree that a hungry baby cares about a certificate." Margaret inhaled sharply. Victor held up a hand, still pleasant. "No one questions your sincerity. But sincerity can create risk. Attachment, misunderstanding, emotional claims, accusations from outside parties. You must understand, Mr. Bennett's position is complicated." Rosa almost laughed. Complicated. That was the word people used when the simple truth was inconvenient. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Victor slid a paper across the desk. "A temporary adjustment. You will continue your employment in kitchen and housekeeping duties. You will not engage in childcare, feeding, soothing, or unsupervised contact with the child. If Mr. Bennett requests your assistance in an emergency, a licensed professional must be present. This protects everyone." Rosa did not touch the paper. "It does not protect Noah." Daniel flinched. Victor's smile faded by one careful degree. "You are fond of the baby. That is understandable. But you must not confuse your feelings with his best interests." Something inside Rosa went cold. She heard another man in another office saying, "We understand your grief, Miss Martinez, but you must not confuse grief with negligence." She saw Mateo's name printed wrong on a form. She saw the check. She saw her own hand shaking around a pen. "I know the difference between my feelings and a child's needs," she said. Victor studied her. "Do you?" The question hung there too long. Daniel finally spoke. "Rosa, please, sign it for now. I need time to understand what is happening." She looked at him then. Not at the millionaire, not at the owner of hospitals, at the father who had carried his child down the back stairs. She wanted to tell him that time was a luxury some babies did not have. She wanted to tell him Mateo had run out of time, while professionals protected themselves with procedure. Instead, she signed. Her signature looked small on Victor Hale's paper. That afternoon, Victor asked Margaret for Rosa's full legal name. By evening, a junior associate in his office had found the first trace. Rosa Elena Martinez, claimant in a sealed settlement involving Street. Agnes Women's Center, a maternity hospital acquired by Bennett Medical Group 19 months earlier. Infant death. Confidentiality agreement. Payment issued. Check uncashed. Victor stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, he called Margaret. "We have a problem," he said. Margaret received the news in the nursery, while Noah slept in uneasy bursts. She listened without moving, her eyes on the baby monitor. "Are you certain?" she asked. Victor's voice came through her phone, low and controlled. "Certain enough. Her child died in one of the Bennett facilities. She signed a non-disclosure agreement. Either she failed to disclose a conflict of interest, or she came into the house intentionally. Both are dangerous." Margaret looked toward the hallway, where Rosa had passed moments earlier with a basket of folded sheets. "I knew there was something wrong with her attachment. Do not confront her yet. I need Daniel calm. Daniel is not calm when it comes to Noah. Then make him afraid." Margaret understood that kind of instruction perfectly. By dinner, Daniel had not eaten. He stood in Caroline's sitting room, a room he had preserved exactly as she left it. The pale blue shawl over the chair, the stack of novels beside the window, the silver-framed photograph of Caroline laughing at something outside the frame. He came there when he wanted to feel near her, but lately the room had begun accusing him. Caroline had trusted him to protect their son. Caroline had trusted the Bennett name. Caroline had died beneath that name. Margaret found him there. Mr. Bennett, she said softly, there is something you need to know about Rosa. He turned. What now? She placed Victor's printed summary on the table. She had highlighted the worst words: infant death, settlement, confidentiality, Bennett Medical Group. Daniel read them once without understanding. Then again with too much understanding. Her baby died at Street Agnes? Yes. Why did nobody tell me? Margaret lowered her eyes with practiced sadness. Perhaps because she did not want you to know. Daniel's face hardened defensively. Because guilt had not yet found somewhere honest to go. You think she came here because of that? I think a grieving mother who lost a child inside your hospital system is now forming an intense bond with your son. I think she may be more fragile than she appears. I think Noah is vulnerable. And I think you are vulnerable too. Daniel looked down at the paper. Rosa's name blurred. Mateo Martinez, male infant, date of death, settlement complete. Get Victor, he said. Rosa was brought to the office after Noah's evening bath. She came, still smelling faintly of laundry soap, with her hair pinned back and her face composed. She saw the papers on Daniel's desk before anyone spoke. Her stomach dropped. Victor stood beside the window. Margaret sat in the chair nearest Daniel, as if to show where trust belonged. Daniel remained standing. Why did you not tell me? He asked. Rosa kept her eyes on the paper. Mateo's name was there. Seeing it in that room felt like seeing his small body placed on cold marble. Because it was mine, she said. It happened in a Bennett hospital. It happened to my son. The answer struck him, but anger rose faster than shame. You took a job in my house, near my child, near my family. You let me hand you, Noah. You did not hand him to me, Rosa said. You carried him to the kitchen because he would not eat. Margaret leaned forward. Do not twist this. Rosa turned to her. I am not twisting anything. I am the only one in this room saying it plain. Victor spoke smoothly. Miss Martinez, did you seek employment in this household because of your history with Bennett Medical Group? No. Did you know Mr. Bennett owned the facility where your child died? I knew the name Bennett was on papers. I did not know his face. Rich men put their names on buildings they never enter. Daniel absorbed that as if she had slapped him. And when you realized? Victor asked. Rosa looked at Daniel. I realized, after I started here, I saw a framed article in the hallway about Bennett Medical. By then I needed the work. I told myself the house was not the hospital. But you never disclosed it. Would you have kept me? No one answered. Her voice grew quieter. I came here to clean, to cook, to pay rent, not to hurt your son. I would never hurt a baby. Daniel's face tightened. But when you held Noah, what did you see? My son, or yours? There it was, the cruelest question. Worse because he did not ask it to be cruel. He asked because he was afraid. Rosa's hands curled at her sides. I saw a hungry baby, she said. I saw a scared baby. I saw a child surrounded by people protecting themselves from blame instead of listening. I have seen that before. Yes. But Noah is not Mateo. Do not use my dead son to make my love suspicious. Margaret rose. This is exactly the instability I warned about. Rosa faced her fully. No, Mrs. Vale. This is grief speaking in a full sentence. You are just not used to hearing it from the help. Daniel closed his eyes. Victor stepped in. Miss Martinez, given this undisclosed conflict, the safest course is immediate separation from the child and perhaps from employment. Mr. Bennett can offer generous severance. Rosa almost smiled. There it was again. Money placed over a wound like a napkin over spilled wine. No, she said. Victor blinked. No? I do not want severance. I do not want another envelope. I do not want quiet money from another Bennett office. If Mr. Bennett fires me, I will leave with my apron and my name. That is all. Daniel opened his eyes. Something in them had shifted. The words another envelope had landed. Another? He asked. Rosa looked away. Victor answered too quickly. Standard settlement language. Nothing unusual. Daniel turned to him. I asked her. The room changed in that moment. Not enough to save Rosa. Not yet. But enough for Victor to notice danger. Rosa was tired. Tired in her bones. Tired of powerful men learning pieces of her pain only when those pieces threatened them. After Mateo died, men from the hospital came to a small office. They said the hospital was sorry for my loss. They said there were complications. They said signing would help me move forward. I had not buried my son yet. I signed because they told me it was the only way to receive assistance. I did not know what I was giving away. Daniel's anger faltered. Victor's did not. Mr. Bennett, this is precisely why further contact is dangerous. Any interaction could be used to reopen a settled matter. Rosa looked at Daniel one last time. Your son is upstairs. He does not care about settled matters. Then she walked out before they could dismiss her. She expected to be fired by morning. Instead, the house entered a stranger kind of punishment. Daniel did not call for her. Margaret kept Noah's door closed. Victor stayed in the office with Daniel until late, and the Bennett mansion filled with the silence of people building defenses. Rosa packed her spare uniform anyway. She folded it carefully, because careful folding was something she could still control. Elsie hovered near the kitchen entrance. Come stay with me if they throw you out tonight, Elsie said. Rosa shook her head. I have my room. That room has a ceiling leak and one window. It is still mine. Elsie wiped her hands on her apron. Did you mean what you said? About the envelope? Rosa did not answer at first. She took the blue socks from her pocket and smoothed them against her palm. Elsie had never seen them before. Her face softened. His? She asked. Rosa nodded. Matteo, she said. And speaking his name in the Bennett kitchen felt both dangerous and holy. He was 5 days old. Elsie crossed herself. Oh, Rosa. They said he was too small. They said these things happen. Maybe some of that is true. But there was a nurse who cried when she thought I was asleep. There was a doctor who would not look at me. There was an alarm nobody answered fast enough. And then there was a lawyer. Above them, a cry began. Both women looked at the ceiling. Rosa closed her fist around the socks. I cannot keep doing this. Doing what? Hearing a baby disappear while everyone discusses liability. Upstairs, Daniel sat alone beside Noah's crib. Margaret had gone to call the doctor again. The night nurse had been dismissed for a break she did not want. Daniel had refused Victor's suggestion to transfer Noah quietly to a private pediatric unit before the situation worsened. He was tired of private units, tired of quiet, tired of men like him solving danger by hiding it behind better doors. Noah whimpered without opening his eyes. Daniel touched his son's hand with one finger. I do not know what I am doing, he whispered. The confession landed in the nursery, small and useless. He looked toward the shelf where Caroline's things had been arranged by Margaret after the funeral. A silver brush, a framed sonogram, a stack of baby books Caroline had marked with colored tabs. There was also a small wooden box Daniel had never opened. He had assumed it held keepsakes too painful for now, and now had become 6 months long. Noah cried harder. Daniel reached for the box because doing anything was better than sitting inside his failure. It was not locked. Inside were hospital bracelets, a pressed flower, a folded note in Caroline's handwriting, and a sealed envelope addressed to Daniel. His name, written by his dead wife, stopped his breath. He almost did not open it. Grief had made him a coward in ways money could conceal from everyone except himself. But Noah cried again, and Daniel thought of Rosa saying, Your son does not care about settled matters. He opened the envelope. Daniel, if you are reading this, then something has happened that we were not ready for. I know you will want to make everything clean and controlled. You will want the best doctors, the best room, the best explanation. But please, before you trust the answers that protect the Bennett name, look at the mothers who do not have our name. He sat down hard in the rocking chair. The letter continued. Caroline wrote of Street Agnes, of late-night staffing cuts, of complaints from women who said they had been ignored, rushed, or made to feel invisible. She wrote that she had asked questions and been told she was emotional because she was pregnant. She wrote that if anything happened to her, Daniel should not let Victor decide what truth was safe enough to know. Near the end, she had written one line 3 times darker than the rest. Find the Martinez file. Daniel read that line until the letters blurred. The next morning, he did not go to Victor. He went to the records himself. Bennett Medical Headquarters occupied the top 6 floors of a glass tower downtown. Daniel entered through the private elevator before most executives arrived. People stood when they saw him. Assistants straightened. Security guards nodded. He had built his life inside the obedience of rooms, and until that morning he had mistaken obedience for trust. He requested the archived Street Agnes settlement files from the year Matteo Martinez died. The compliance director hesitated just long enough to confirm Caroline's fear. Mr. Bennett, those are closed matters. Mr. Hale usually handles access. Daniel looked at him. I am not asking what Victor usually handles. Within an hour, 3 boxes appeared in a conference room without windows. Daniel opened the first with hands that felt strangely cold. There were incident summaries, staffing rosters, complaint letters, internal emails, and settlement forms. At first, the language seemed designed to exhaust guilt. Adverse outcome, unforeseeable deterioration, protocol variance, resource reallocation. Then he found the night Mateo died. 2 nurses scheduled, one reassigned to a VIP postpartum suite after a donor's daughter complained. 1 neonatal monitor flagged. Response delayed 8 minutes. Attending physician unavailable. Temporary resident called twice. Infant transferred too late. Daniel stared at the page. 8 minutes. He thought of every board meeting where 8 minutes had been nothing. A delay before a presentation, a late lunch, traffic between hospitals. In Rosa's life, 8 minutes had become a grave. Behind that file were others. Different names, similar phrases. Women who did not speak English fluently. Women with Medicaid paperwork. Women who complained and then signed. Women whose grief had been wrapped in confidentiality and stored in boxes until a dead wife sent her husband looking. Daniel left headquarters carrying copies no one had authorized him to take. At the mansion, Noah had been moved to the master bedroom because Daniel could not bear the nursery. Margaret objected. Victor objected by phone. Daniel stopped answering. Rosa was in the laundry room when he found her. She was folding Noah's tiny white sleepers into perfect squares. I read Caroline's letter, he said. The sleeper in Rosa's hands stilled. She knew your son's name. Rosa looked up slowly. What? Daniel held out a copy of the page. Find the Martinez file. Rosa did not take it. Her face changed as if the room had tilted beneath her. No, she whispered. She did not know me. She knew something was wrong. She asked questions before Noah was born. She left me instructions, and I was too afraid to open the letter. Rosa backed against the folding table. Do not do this. Do what? Do not make your wife into an apology for what happened. Do not make me grateful because one rich woman noticed after my baby was already gone. The words were hard, but Daniel did not defend himself. He deserved worse. I am not asking for gratitude, he said. I am asking what you want me to do with the truth. Rosa laughed once, broken and humorless. Now you ask me? After I signed? After they buried my son's name in boxes? Yes, he said. Too late, but yes. For a long moment, the only sound was the dryer turning behind them. Rosa looked down at the sleepers. Noah's clothes, not Mateo's. Never Mateo's. I want you to feed your son, she said. I want you to stop letting lawyers raise him. I want the files opened, not only mine, all of them. I want the mothers called by their names, not case numbers. And I want Victor Hale away from me. Daniel nodded once. Done. Do not say done like money can make it done. He accepted that too, then started. That evening, Rosa returned to Noah's room not as an official caregiver, because no paper in the house knew what to call her, but as the person Daniel asked to help. Margaret watched from the doorway, furious and frightened. She had built her authority on the belief that rich families needed her to manage intimacy. Rosa threatened that authority not because she was ambitious, but because Noah trusted her without permission. Noah drank 2 ounces in Rosa's arms, then 1 more in Daniel's. Rosa made Daniel do the work himself. She corrected him without softness when fear made him stiff. Do not stare at the bottle, she said. Look at him. I am looking. No. You are measuring. Look. Daniel forced his eyes away from the ounce marks and saw his son. Noah's lashes were damp. One hand rested against Daniel's thumb. His tiny mouth worked slowly, uncertain but willing. Daniel began to cry without sound. Rosa looked away to give him the mercy of privacy. In the hallway, Margaret called Victor. Daniel has turned, she said. Victor was silent for a moment. Then we move quickly. How? We make the maid the story before she makes the hospitals the story. Within 2 days, rumors began moving through the mansion. And then Rosa had violated her confidentiality agreement. Rosa might sue. Rosa might sell photographs. Rosa might have been feeding the baby incorrectly on purpose so she could appear necessary. No one said these things to her face at first. They floated near her, carried by sudden silences when she entered rooms. by staff who pitied her but needed their paychecks, by Margaret's clipped instructions, by Victor's closed-door meetings. Rosa had lived long enough in poverty to understand how reputation could be stolen by people who had never needed one to survive. The attack reached Daniel at breakfast when a board member called, concerned about household exposure. By lunch, the head of public relations had sent a memo warning that any connection between Rosa Martinez, infant feeding issues, and Old Street, Agnes settlements could become a reputational crisis. By evening, Victor arrived with a plan. "We need a private resolution," he told Daniel. "Tonight, before documents leave your control." Daniel stood in his office with Caroline's letter in his jacket pocket. "The documents already left my control when people died and we lied." Victor's expression hardened. It was the first honest thing his face had done. "Be careful. Grief is making you reckless. My wife's letter is making me literate. There is a difference. And the maid? Is she making you righteous?" Daniel stepped closer. "Say her name." Victor smiled thinly. "Rosa Martinez is a liability. She signed a confidentiality agreement. She accepted settlement terms. She never cashed the check. That does not matter legally. It matters morally. Morality does not protect companies." Daniel looked at the man who had advised his family for 15 years and finally saw him clearly. Victor did not love the Bennett name. He loved the machinery that allowed names like Bennett to survive anything. "Then maybe the company does not deserve protection," Daniel said. Victor set his briefcase on the desk. "Before you destroy your father's legacy, attend one meeting. The executive committee, risk management, and outside counsel. Bring Miss Martinez if you insist. Let her hear the consequences. Let us all be adults." Daniel knew it was a trap. He agreed anyway. Rosa did not want to attend. She stood in the servants' hallway with her coat on, ready to go home after Noah's evening feeding, when Daniel asked her. "No," she said immediately. "They are discussing your son, your agreement, your name. You should be in the room. Rooms like that are not built for women like me." "Then let them be uncomfortable." She looked at him. "You think courage is walking into a room with you beside me. For you, maybe it is. For me, it is knowing they can still take my job, my home, my peace, and then call it procedure." Daniel had no answer. Rosa took the blue socks from her pocket and held them once before putting them back. "I will go for Mateo," she said. "Not for you." The meeting took place the next morning in the mansion's formal dining room, because Victor wanted home advantage disguised as privacy. The long table that had hosted donors, governors, surgeons, and Christmas photographs now held folders marked confidential. Daniel sat at one end. Victor sat at the other. Margaret sat along the side, back straight, hands folded. Two board members appeared on video screens. A public relations consultant joined by phone. Rosa was offered a chair near the wall. Daniel moved the chair beside his. Victor noticed. Everyone noticed. Rosa sat without thanking him. Victor began with sympathy, the way men like him always did before they loaded the gun. "Miss Martinez, no one here wishes to deepen your pain. What happened to your child was tragic. It was reviewed. It was settled. Reopening these matters publicly could harm many families, including yours. Media attention is not gentle. Your son's name could become a headline. Your personal history would be examined. Your immigration records, employment records, financial difficulties, emotional state after the loss. I say this not as a threat, but as reality." Rosa listened. Her face gave him nothing. He continued. "Mr. Bennett is prepared to offer a substantial private fund in Mateo's memory, along with housing assistance and continued medical coverage for any future children you may have. In return, you reaffirm confidentiality, resign from household employment, and agree not to pursue or encourage claims related to Street Agnes or Bennett Medical Group." Daniel's hand closed into a fist. Rosa looked at the folder. Victor slid toward her. It was always a folder. Always paper pretending to be mercy. "How much?" she asked. Victor relaxed by a fraction. "We can discuss numbers respectfully." "No. Say it. How much is the quiet version of my son worth today?" One board member shifted on the screen. Margaret looked down. Victor's jaw tightened. "This is not productive." It is the first honest question in the room. The public relations consultant's voice crackled from the phone. "Perhaps we should pause." Rosa stood. Her legs were shaking, but the table was too polished for anyone to see. "When Mateo died, I thought my grief was too small to stand beside your lawyers. I thought because I cleaned houses and counted bus fare, maybe I had missed something smarter people understood. I thought signing meant I was being a good mother because at least there would be money for his burial. But I never cashed your check. Do you know why? No one answered. Because every time I looked at it, I felt like I was being paid to become the kind of mother who would stop saying his name. Daniel closed his eyes. Rosa turned to him. Do not close your eyes. You need to hear this too. He opened them. She faced the room again. I did not come to this house for revenge. I did not hold Noah because I wanted money. I held him because a baby was hungry and afraid. If that makes me dangerous, then maybe dangerous is what this family needed. Margaret's control finally cracked. You are obsessed. You carry another child's socks in your pocket while holding Mr. Bennett's son. That is not healthy. That is not appropriate. You want to be needed here because you could not save your own baby. The words landed like a slap. Rosa went still. Daniel rose, but Rosa lifted one hand. Let her finish, Rosa said. Margaret's face flushed, but she pressed on, believing cruelty was victory if spoken with enough authority. Noah needs stability. He needs family. He does not need a grieving maid projecting fantasies onto him. Caroline Bennett was his mother. You are not. Rosa nodded once. That is true. The room quieted. Caroline is his mother. I am not. Mateo is my son. Noah is not. That is true. But you have used that truth like a weapon because you do not understand something simple. Love is not theft. Comforting one child does not erase another. Keeping my son's socks in my pocket does not mean I am confused. It means I remember. She turned to Daniel. And you need to remember too. Not only Caroline as a photograph. Caroline is a woman who tried to warn you. Daniel removed the letter from his jacket. Victor stood. Daniel, do not. Daniel looked at him. You do not advise me anymore. Then he read Caroline's letter aloud. No one interrupted. Even the screen seemed to freeze around the words. Caroline's voice, carried by Daniel's breaking one, entered the dining room like a witness no one could cross-examine. She named Street Agnes. She named staffing cuts. She named dismissed complaints. She named the Martinez file. She named Victor once, carefully, not as an enemy, but as a man Daniel should not allow to decide which truths were manageable. By the end, Victor's face had lost all pleasantness. Daniel placed the letter on the table and added the copied records beside it. I am turning these over to independent counsel and state investigators. Bennett Medical will notify affected families, publicly. One board member shouted from the screen. The public relations consultant said, Daniel, this could collapse confidence across the entire network. Victor said something about breach of fiduciary duty. Margaret began to cry, but even her tears seemed offended rather than sorry. Rosa stood very still. This was what she had wanted, and it hurt more than she expected. Truth did not bring Mateo back. It did not make the hospital room warmer. It did not return the minutes. It only opened the grave of what had been done and asked the living what they would become. Victor pointed at her. You think this woman will save you? She will be the face of the scandal. The press will devour her. Other claimants will come out of nowhere. Some will lie. Some will exaggerate. Your company will bleed until there is nothing left. Rosa answered before Daniel could. Then maybe it should bleed where it made others bleed. Silence. Daniel looked at her with something deeper than gratitude. It was recognition, and it did not ask her to soften the truth so he could bear it. The first article appeared 48 hours later. Bennett Medical Group reopens infant and maternal care settlements after founder's letter raises questions. Rosa's name was not in the first article because Daniel kept one promise well. He protected the families before protecting himself. But names have a way of leaking when powerful people panic. Within a week, reporters stood outside the mansion gates. Cameras followed Daniel from headquarters. Old patients called hotlines. Nurses who had been told to stay quiet began to speak. Some cried through interviews. Some brought schedules. Some brought emails. Some brought the kind of memory institutions count on poor people being too tired to organize. Victor resigned before he could be fired, then appeared through his own attorney to deny wrongdoing. Margaret left the mansion 2 days after the meeting, saying she could no longer work in an environment where emotional boundaries had been abandoned. Elsie said good riddance in the pantry and baked a cake no one admitted was celebratory. Noah did not understand scandal. He understood arms, voices, light, hunger, and fear. He understood that his father was present more often now. Daniel learned to prepare bottles without calling anyone. He learned which cloth Noah liked against his cheek. He learned that sometimes the baby cried and nothing needed to be fixed immediately. Sometimes he only needed someone to stay. Rosa taught him that, then stepped back. It was harder than she expected. In the beginning, Noah turned toward her whenever he heard her voice. His small face searched rooms until he found her, and each time, Rosa felt both joy and guilt. She worried that loving his trust was another way of losing Mateo again. She worried that stepping away would hurt Noah. She worried that staying close would prove Margaret right in the minds of people who already wanted a reason. One evening, Daniel found her in the garden, after Noah had gone to sleep. The Bennett garden had been Caroline's favorite place, though after her death, it had become another display maintained by workers who never sat in it. Rosa sat on a stone bench beneath a magnolia tree, holding the blue socks. Daniel stopped a few feet away. "May I sit?" She almost smiled. He asked permission often now, as if learning a language he should have known. "It is your bench," she said. "That does not answer the question." She nodded. He sat with space between them. For a while neither spoke. The garden lights glowed along the path. Somewhere beyond the walls, traffic moved through the city with its ordinary indifference. "The investigators called today," Daniel said. "They found more cases, more than I thought, more than Caroline feared." Rosa closed her fingers around the socks. "I am sorry," he said. She looked at him. "For which part?" The question did not spare him. He did not ask it to. "For owning buildings I did not understand. For believing reports written to comfort me. For letting Victor treat people like problems to be contained. For asking whether you saw Noah as Mateo. For calling you only a maid. For every minute your son waited because my company counted staffing like a cost instead of a promise." Rosa looked away before her face broke. "That is many sorries," she said. "Not enough." "No." The honesty sat between them, painful but clean. Daniel took a folded document from his pocket. The board approved the emergency reforms, mandatory staffing ratios in all maternity and neonatal units, independent patient advocates on night shifts, settlement reviews, a family assistance fund, not charity, restitution, and a separate foundation, if you allow it, named for Mateo and Caroline. Rosa did not take the paper. "Why do you need my permission?" "Because Mateo is not a symbol I get to use. He is your son." The sentence undid something in her, not healed it. Healing was too gentle a word, but it loosened one knot grief had tied around her throat. "His name was Mateo Luis Martinez," she said. "He had black hair. Everyone said newborns cannot smile, but he did. Once. Maybe it was gas. I do not care. It was mine." Daniel listened, as if listening itself had become his first useful act. "Then the foundation uses his full name," he said. "Or it does not use it at all." Rosa looked down at the socks. "And Caroline?" "Caroline Ann Bennett." She hated formal speeches. She put hot sauce on eggs. She sang badly and loudly when she drove. She would have loved Noah in a way that embarrassed him later. Rosa gave a small laugh through tears. Daniel smiled, and for the first time it did not look like something breaking. "The Mateo Luis Martinez and Caroline Ann Bennett Foundation," Rosa said. "Too long for rich people?" "Good," Daniel said. "Let them say every word." Months passed, though grief did not move in months. It moved in ordinary tests. The first time Rosa entered a Bennett hospital again, her legs nearly failed before the automatic doors. It was not Street. Agnes. That building had been temporarily closed for review. This was the main women's center downtown, newly renovated, full of glass and sunlight, and signs promising patient dignity in 3 languages. Still, the smell of antiseptic found the same place in her body. Daniel walked beside her but did not touch her elbow. He had learned not to guide people through pain unless they asked. They were there for the opening of the new maternal patient advocacy wing. Reporters waited in a roped area. Nurses lined the hall. Families who had joined the settlement review sat in the front rows, some holding photographs, some holding living children who squirmed and whispered and dropped crackers on the floor. Rosa saw mothers like herself everywhere. Tired hands, careful dresses, eyes trained by loss to notice exits. She almost turned around. Then she saw a small display case near the entrance. It was empty, except for a card bearing Mateo's full name. Daniel had asked if she wanted to place something there. She had said no at first. She did not want her son's memory turned into decoration. But that morning, before leaving her apartment, she had opened the box where she kept the blue socks and understood that carrying them forever in her pocket had been one kind of love. Letting them stand witness could be another. When the ceremony began, Daniel spoke first. He did not sound like the man from old charity galas. He did not praise innovation or legacy or excellence. He named failure. He named policies that had valued donors over patients. He named the harm done by silence. He named Caroline's warning and Rosa's courage, but he did not make either woman into a story about his redemption. Then Rosa was asked to speak. She had written nothing. Every prepared sentence had sounded too clean. She stepped to the microphone with the blue socks in her hand. "My son was 5 days old," she said. A baby fussed in the third row, and the sound nearly stopped her. She breathed through it. "For a long time, I thought the only thing left of him was what I could carry secretly. These socks, his hospital bracelet, my memory. I thought if powerful people forgot him, then I had to remember him alone. But no mother should have to carry the truth alone. No family should have to sign silence before they understand what happened. No baby should wait because a hospital decided some rooms mattered more than others." She looked toward Daniel. He did not look away. "I did not save Noah Bennett because I am special. I held him because someone should have held my son with that much urgency. I spoke because Caroline Bennett tried to speak before me. This place will not bring them back. Nothing will. But if it keeps one nurse from being left alone, one mother from being dismissed, one baby from being treated like a number, then Mateo's name is not buried anymore." She placed the socks in the display case. For a moment, nobody clapped. It was better that way. Silence, when honest, could be respect. Then one mother in the front row began to cry. Another stood. A nurse covered her face. Daniel bowed his head. The applause came slowly, not like celebration, but like people agreeing to carry something together. After the ceremony, Rosa found Daniel in the new family room, holding Noah on his hip. Noah was bigger now, still delicate but bright-eyed, with Caroline's mouth and Daniel's serious brow. He reached toward Rosa the moment he saw her. Rosa smiled but did not take him immediately. "Your father has you." Noah made an offended little sound. Daniel laughed. It was rusty, but real. "He has opinions." "Good," Rosa said. "Let him keep them." Noah grabbed Daniel's collar and leaned back dramatically, as if the world had wronged him by delaying Rosa's attention. Daniel adjusted him with the ease of practice. "He ate 4 ounces this morning," Daniel said, unable to hide his pride. "Because you did not stare at the bottle?" I looked at him. "Good." They stood together near the window. Below, the hospital entrance filled with families, nurses, reporters, and staff members carrying boxes into the new wing. The Bennett name still hung on the building, but beneath it now, on a bronze plaque, were 2 more names that money had not been able to erase. Daniel said, "I keep thinking Caroline would be angry with me." "Maybe," Rosa said. He looked startled, then nodded. "Fair. But maybe anger is not the opposite of love. Maybe she would be angry because she loved you enough to expect better." Noah slapped his small hand against Daniel's cheek. Daniel kissed his palm. "I am trying," he said. "He will know. Children know who stays." Rosa said it, and heard the echo of her own truth. Mateo had known she stayed. Through wires, through alarms, through fear, through the moment when staying did not save him. Love had not failed because death came. Love failed only when the living used death as a reason to stop telling the truth. A week later, Rosa moved out of her leaking apartment. Not into the Bennett mansion. She refused that immediately, and Daniel had the good sense not to ask twice. Through the restitution fund, she received compensation she had once been pressured to sign away. But she used only part of it for herself. A small, sunny apartment near a bus line, with a kitchen window, wide enough for Basil, and a bedroom where Mateo's things could rest on a shelf instead of in a box under the bed. She continued working with the foundation, not as a mascot for grief, but as a patient advocate. The first time a hospital administrator called her unqualified, Rosa looked at him until he corrected himself. She took classes at night in family support services. She sat with mothers who did not trust paperwork. She explained forms slowly. She told them they could ask for interpreters, second opinions, names, times, records. She taught them that politeness was not the same as permission, and that fear did not make them foolish. Sometimes, after long days, she visited the Bennett mansion. The house had changed in ways visitors might not notice. The nursery lights were warmer. Caroline's photographs had moved from memorial positions into living rooms where Noah could grow up seeing her as part of daily life. The formal dining room was used less, the kitchen table more. Daniel learned to eat while holding a baby, which amused Elsie endlessly. He also learned that grief could not be managed like a department. Some days he still reached for his phone instead of feeling. Some days Rosa called him on it. "Presence," she would say. "I am here. Your body is here. Come back with the rest." He listened. One rainy evening, nearly a year after Rosa first climbed the stairs toward Noah's fading cry, she arrived to find Daniel sitting on the nursery floor. Noah, now strong enough to crawl with alarming determination, was surrounded by soft blocks. He was not crying. He was furious, because 2 blocks would not stack the way he wanted. Daniel looked up helplessly. "He gets that from Caroline." Rosa leaned against the doorframe. "Are you sure it is not from you?" Noah banged a block on the floor and shouted a word that was not yet a word. Daniel picked up the fallen block, then stopped himself from fixing the tower. He placed it near Noah instead. "You try," he said. Rosa watched the simple act and felt a tenderness that did not cut. Daniel was learning not to solve every discomfort. Noah was learning that frustration did not mean abandonment. The room that had once been full of monitors and fear was full of ordinary life. Noah noticed Rosa then, and crawled toward her at full speed, collapsing twice on the way. She knelt and opened her arms. He crashed into her with a delighted sound. For a heartbeat, grief rose with the old question, what would Mateo have done at this age? Would he have crawled like this? Would his hair have curled? Would he have laughed when rain hit the window? Rosa closed her eyes and held Noah without stealing him from his father, without turning him into a ghost, without asking him to heal what no child should be asked to heal. "Hola, little one," she whispered. Daniel sat nearby, giving them a moment without fear. Later, after Noah slept, Rosa stepped into Caroline's garden. The magnolia tree had begun to bloom again. Daniel joined her with 2 mugs of tea. He handed one over. "The state report comes out tomorrow," he said. Rosa looked at the dark branches. "Are you ready?" "No. But that seems less important than it used to." "Good answer." He smiled faintly. "I learned from a difficult teacher." "Expensive?" "Very." They stood in companionable silence. Not friendship exactly, though perhaps it was becoming that. Not family in the easy way people use the word to smooth over debts. Something more careful. Something built from truth, apology, boundaries, and the shared work of keeping children alive. Daniel said, "There is something else. The board wants to rename the new advocacy training program after you." "I told them they had to ask you, not me." Rosa groaned. "Rich people love naming things." "They do." "No." He nodded. "I expected that." She thought for a moment. "Name it the listening room." No one's name, just the thing everyone forgot to do. Daniel's eyes softened. "The listening room. And make sure the night shift gets the best coffee. Not the cheap machine near the elevators. Good coffee. If you want nurses alert at 3 in the morning, start there." He laughed. "That may be the most practical reform yet. Put it in the budget." "Yes, ma'am." Rosa looked at him sharply. He raised both hands. Respectfully, she allowed herself to laugh. The next day, the state report confirmed what the files had shown. Bennett Medical had failed families through staffing decisions, delayed responses, weak oversight, and legal pressure that prioritized silence. The news cycle was brutal. Share prices fell. Executives resigned. Lawsuits expanded. Daniel testified publicly and did not hide behind counsel. Victor's emails became evidence. Margaret's role was smaller but ugly. Internal messages showed she had helped frame patient complaints as emotional instability when she worked in family relations for Street Agnes. Rosa watched parts of the hearing from the foundation office. When Victor was questioned about settlement practices, he used words like standard, lawful, efficient, and unfortunate. Rosa turned the screen off. There were only so many polished words a person could swallow before choking. That afternoon, a young mother came into the listening room carrying a premature baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. She looked frightened, defensive, and exhausted. Her English was careful. Her hospital bracelet was too loose around her wrist. "They said I can ask for someone," the mother said. "They said you help." Rosa stood. Yes. What is your baby's name? The mother blinked, surprised by the first question. Lucia, Rosa smiled. Then tell me what Lucia needs. We will write it down together. The mother began to cry before she could speak. Rosa did not rush her. She brought water. She found tissues. She sat beside her, not across a desk, and waited. Outside the room, hospital life moved quickly. Monitors beeped, shoes squeaked. Doctors paged one another. But inside the listening room, a frightened woman was given time, and time was the first form of justice Rosa had ever wanted. That evening, Rosa visited Mateo's grave. It was a small stone in a cemetery where highway noise drifted over the fence. For months after his death, she had come with apology. Sorry I signed. Sorry I did not understand. Sorry I could not make them move faster. Sorry I am still breathing when you are not. This time, she brought white flowers and a copy of the foundation brochure with his full name printed beside Caroline's. She sat on the grass, not caring that the ground was damp. You did something today, she told him. A little girl named Lucia has a nurse advocate because of you. Her mother slept for 1 hour because of you. They will say the foundation did it, or the policy did it, or Mr. Bennett did it, but I know. You were there. Wind moved through the cemetery. Rosa touched the grass near the stone. I held another baby. I think you know that. I think you are not angry. I think love can stretch farther than I was afraid it could. She stayed until sunset. At the Bennett mansion, Daniel was learning another kind of night. Noah woke at 2 in the morning with a fever from teething, furious and damp-haired. The old Daniel would have summoned nurses, checked symptoms online, called the pediatrician twice, and stood outside his own child's distress like a manager awaiting updates. This Daniel took Noah into the rocking chair, pressed a cool cloth against his gums, and hummed badly. The song was not Rosa's lullaby. He would not take that. It was one Caroline had sung in the car, off-key and cheerful. Noah cried through most of it, then quieted. Not because Daniel sang well, but because Daniel stayed. In the doorway, Rosa watched for only a moment. She had come by after a late foundation meeting to drop off patient forms Daniel needed to sign. She had heard Noah and climbed the stairs by instinct, but when she reached the nursery, she saw she was not needed. The realization hurt and healed at once. Daniel looked up. Am I doing it right? Rosa smiled. He is still yelling, so he is strong. You are still holding him, so you are learning. That is not an answer. It is the only one you get. Noah hiccuped, then settled against his father's chest. Rosa stepped back from the doorway. For so long, she had thought being needed was the proof that love mattered. Mateo had needed her, and still he died. Noah had needed her, and for a while that need gave her grief somewhere to go. But now she saw another possibility. Maybe the deepest kind of help was not making a child need you forever. Maybe it was helping love find its rightful hands. She went downstairs quietly. On the kitchen table, Elsie had left a covered plate and a note. Eat before you save anyone else. Rosa laughed, sat down, and obeyed. The final dedication ceremony for the listening room happened without cameras, Rosa insisted. There had been enough public truth. This part belonged to the families. Daniel came with Noah, who wore a tiny blue sweater, and tried to chew the program. Nurses came off shift with tired faces. Mothers came with photographs. Some fathers came too, standing awkwardly, holding flowers, learning grief's language later than the women but learning it still. On the wall there was no portrait of Rosa, no grand image of Daniel, no slogan about excellence. There was only a simple inscription: for every child who needed more time. For every parent who deserved to be heard. Below it were 2 names, Mateo Luis Martinez and Caroline Ann Bennett, not in gold, not larger than the rest, but steady and clear. Rosa stood in front of the wall with Noah on her hip. He had reached for her during the quiet prayer, and Daniel had handed him over without fear. Afterward, Noah patted the inscription with one open hand. Careful, Daniel said. Rosa shook her head. Let him. Noah slapped the wall again, delighted by the sound. A laugh moved through the room. Not a disrespectful laugh, a living one. Rosa felt it enter places in her that had been silent for years. Daniel came to stand beside her. He will know their names. Tell him the truth when he is old enough, Rosa said. Not a clean version, a kind version, but true. I will. Tell him his mother was brave. Tell him my son was small and real. Tell him people made mistakes and people made choices, and those are not always the same thing. Daniel nodded. Noah leaned his head against Rosa's shoulder. For a moment, she allowed herself to close her eyes. She felt his weight. She felt the absence of Matteo, not as a knife this time, but as a space filled with light she could not hold and did not have to hide. When she opened her eyes, Daniel was watching his son, not the bottle, not the monitors, not the risk, not the name Bennett on any wall. Just his son. Rosa handed Noah back to him. The baby fussed for half a second, then settled. That was the ending no headline would understand. The miracle was not that Noah had once swallowed from a bottle in Rosa's arms. The miracle was that a house built on money had learned to listen. A father frozen by grief had learned to stay, and a mother who had been paid to be silent had spoken loudly enough to change the rooms where other babies would fight to live. After the dedication, Rosa walked alone through the new wing before the doors opened for the next shift. The rooms were quiet, stocked, and bright, but she did not trust brightness by itself. She checked the call buttons. She asked a nurse how many patients she had tonight. She opened the family pantry and found the good coffee Daniel had promised, lined up beside paper cups and granola bars. That made her smile more than the bronze plaque had. A plaque could flatter the dead. Coffee at 3 a.m. could help the living. In one room, a young father slept upright beside an incubator, his hand pressed against the glass. Rosa paused, then kept walking. She no longer needed every child to become Matteo in order to matter. She no longer needed every frightened parent to carry her exact wound. Pain had made her notice people, but truth had taught her not to own them. At the end of the hall, Daniel caught up with her, Noah asleep against his chest. The baby had one fist wrapped in his father's shirt. Daniel looked tired, not defeated. "You are inspecting the place," he said. "Someone should. I hired inspectors." "I know. I am checking whether they remembered people." Daniel looked down the hallway. "And did they?" Rosa listened. A nurse laughed softly at a desk. A monitor chimed and someone answered quickly. A mother asked for water in Spanish, and another voice replied in Spanish right away. "Tonight," Rosa said, "they remembered. Tomorrow they have to remember again." Daniel nodded. "Then we keep checking." Rosa glanced at Noah. "We do." Months later, when people told the story, they often got the beginning wrong. They said a maid saved a millionaire's baby. They said a poor woman exposed a hospital scandal. They said Daniel Bennett found redemption. They said Bennett Medical changed because of an investigation, a letter, a lawsuit, a foundation. All of that was partly true, but Rosa knew the real beginning had been smaller. A baby cried. A woman heard the difference. And for once, she refused to let silence answer. That was what remained after all the lawyers, headlines, apologies, and reforms had passed. Not a perfect ending, but a promise repeated in ordinary rooms. Every night, whenever someone small cried and someone stayed long enough to hear them, an answer with love.